Okay, good evening. I think we are live. I will just quickly check the audio. Okay, I think the audio is fine too. Please let me know in the chat if the audio sort of cuts off or it's bizarre. Okay, but this is sort of the best I can do for now. Okay, welcome back, all the aspirants, MCA, NIMCET aspirants. We are continuing with our lecture series. Today we have a whole new topic for us, which is figures of speech. Very, very different from parts of speech. Okay, alluding to the previous chapters. I want you to go through all the previous chapters because we've done a big chunk of grammar in the previous sessions. We're done with parts of speech. We're done with articles. We're done with subject verb agreement. We're done with pronouns. Okay, we're done with voices, reported speech, right? These are some of the most significant topics. Even tenses is done, prepositions is done, right? I think these are one of the some of the most significant topics and a big chunk of grammar which has already been done. So kindly go through all these chapters because the type of questions that you will get in your exam will be in the form of error detection, which is spot the error, or error correction. Now, for these questions, there is no fixed syllabus. These topics target grammar, but the topic could be any of these 8 to 10 grammar topics. So you need to know all the grammar topics and all its rules to cater to questions like these. Now, वर्बल में ग्रामर का ये एडवांटेज है कि ग्रामर अगर रूल्स पता है तो टेक्स वेरी लेस टाइम एंड यूजुअली एक्यूरेसी भी मेंटेन करती है, कोई तुक्का नहीं लगाना पड़ता. So grammar is one safe bet that you can make in your exam. So kindly watch all the previous lectures if you haven't yet. Today we're doing figures of speech. Figures of speech is not entirely grammar, but sort of language. Now, figures of speech or poetic devices are something that you might have done previously, but poetic devices are usually asked in the CET exam, and the ones that you might have done would be the ones that you could recall would be 4 to 5, right? 4 to 5 common ones. So probably you can recall simile, you can recall metaphor, right? In the same lines, you can possibly even record personification, right? Some people might stop here and have a hard time recalling other figures of speech. But today's lecture will easily target 12 to 13 figures of speeches. Now, these 12 to 13 वैसे तो बहुत सारी figures of speeches होती हैं, आराम से 40 to 50 figures of speeches होती हैं इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज में, बट उतना सारा करने का जरूरत बिल्कुल नहीं है. हम जितना एग्जाम है, जितना एग्जाम का डिफिकल्टी लेवल है, उसके हिसाब से 12 से 13 भी बहुत है ना. फिगर्स ऑफ स्पीच किस तरह से आ सकता है, ये सवाल एमसीक्यू में आ सकता है, वेयर दे हैव गिवन यू वन सेंटेंस एंड दे हैव आस्क्ड यू टू आइडेंटिफाई कि कौन सा फिगर ऑफ स्पीच है, या फिर आरसी के एक सवाल में पूछा जा सकता है एक लाइन को हाईलाइट करके कि इस लाइन में कौन सा फिगर ऑफ स्पीच है. तो हाँ, चांसेस थोड़े कम है, बट इट इज टेक्निकली अ पार्ट ऑफ द सिलेबस, सो आ सकता है. सो बेसिक फिगर्स ऑफ स्पीच आपको पता होना चाहिए. That's exactly what the target is for today's lecture. So kindly keep watching till the end to know all the significant figures of speech. ठीक है, फिगर्स ऑफ स्पीच और पार्ट्स ऑफ स्पीच से कंफ्यूज मत होना. पार्ट्स ऑफ स्पीच यानी एक स्पीच का पार्ट विच इज अगेन देयरफॉर रिलेटेड टू ग्रामर. फिगर ऑफ स्पीच यानी एक स्पीच को अलग अलग लिखने का तरीका, ठीक है, जिन्हें कहा जाता है पोएटिक डिवाइसेस. नाउ इन लोग का ओके, बिफोर मूविंग टू specific figures of speech, let me tell you what the purpose of figures of speech is. Figures of speech or poetic devices, as the name suggests, are devices for a poet, are tools for a poet. अब ना ही हम पोएट हैं, ठीक है, वी हैव nothing to do with poetry. So technically, I personally find this question very irrelevant to the exam. But sometimes CET does end up asking this question, so it's better to prepare. Basically, the job of these tools is for ornamentation, यानी decoration का काम करते हैं ये figures of speech. ठीक है, कोई कभी simply नहीं बोलेगा कि बाहर हवा चल रही है और पत्तियां हिल रही हैं. No poet talks in a very simple, straightforward manner. They usually use poetic devices to convey their feelings. So instead of saying it's windy outside, they will preferably say, oh, the leaves are dancing in the breeze. That conveys कि बाहर इतनी तेज हवा चल रही है कि पत्तियां हिल रही हैं. Now, the leaves being dancing outside is also a figure of speech. इसी तरह बहुत सारे figures of speech हैं. Let's cover some important one. Alright, starting with the most basic, most overused, and simplest of all is simile. Simile means same, similar. Okay, here this is used for comparison. Okay, ये दो भाई हैं, simile और metaphor. ये दोनों भाई हैं और ये दोनों कंपैरिजन के लिए यूज किए जाते हैं. दोनों में हल्का सा ही फर्क है. In a simile, comparison is made between two objects of different kinds, but इसमें हमेशा इनमें से कोई शब्द एक यूज किया जाता है. So comparisons with words like as, like, and such are called simile. For example, her eyes were as blue as the sky. Okay, a poet will never say, oh, her eyes were blue. No, obviously they want to ornament, they want to decorate, they want to be very creative with expression. So they will say her eyes were as blue as the sky. The package is as light as a feather. My cousin is as blind as a bat. I was as calm as a cucumber during the test. My cousin chatters like a monkey. Even this is a simile, comparing my cousin with a monkey using like. Now, moving on to the brother, which is a metaphor. Now, metaphor also makes comparison, but without as, like, and such. So, look at this sentence. He fought as fiercely as a tiger is a simile, but इनको निकालने के बाद, okay, he was a tiger in the fight makes it a metaphor. So that is the basic difference between the two. One uses as and like, whereas the other doesn't. A metaphor makes a direct comparison between the two unrelated things and does not use words such as like, as, or such. For example, his heart, he has a heart of stone is a metaphor, but his heart is as cold as a stone is a simile. This is not a classroom, it is a fish market. ठीक है, comparing classroom to fish market without as and like is also a metaphor. A famous Shakespeare dialogue, all the world is a stage and we are all performers, is also metaphor, comparing world with a big stage without using as and like. Okay, so metaphor and similes are some of the most common and overused poetic devices by writers. Next है personification. Personification. I think this is also something that you might have heard. Personification, it's right in the name. किसी को person बनाना. Okay, to make something a person, to make a non-person person. So the example that I took in the beginning, the leaves were dancing in the breeze, is an example of personification, right? Because leaves are definitely not a person. They can't really be dancing. But because I'm a poet and I'm getting creative with my speech, I'm using personification. So it is a figure of speech that attributes human qualities to non-living objects, animals, or abstract concepts. So basically, human qualities to non-humans. ठीक है? They have to be non-humans. Humans को human quality देना is not personification. Non-person को person बनाना is personification. By doing so, it brings life and personality to non-human entities. For example, the stars smiled down on us. Definitely not a quality associated with stars. We are definitely making stars a person here. The trees danced in the breeze. The time flies when you are having fun. ठीक है? Time flies. It's a very common saying. It's a very common maxim. But time can never fly. So this is also another example of personification. Okay, this is a one that we've definitely used. मेरी एक sun kissed photo लो. ठीक है? Instagram पे डालने के लिए मेरी एक sun kissed photo. Sun is obviously never going to kiss you, but it comes so close to you that you think that it's almost kissing you. And that is where the phrase comes from, a sun kissed photo. That is also an example of personification. So, another very common and overused figure of speech. Now is an oxymoron. Oxymoron is not on comparison but on contrast. ठीक है? मेटाफर और सिमिली कंपैरिजन वाले फिगर्स ऑफ स्पीच थे. ऑक्सीमोरॉन कॉन्ट्रास्ट वाला फिगर ऑफ स्पीच है, यानी ऑपोजिट. Oxymoron brings words with opposite meanings together, often in a short phrase of expression to highlight the contrast between them. For example, the movie had a bitter-sweet ending. Bitter and sweet are opposite words. Hence, this is an example of oxymoron. For example, that dress is pretty ugly. See, again, pretty and ugly are opposite words. Teacher is coming, act naturally. Acting करूँ कि natural रहूं, समझ ही नहीं आ रहा. ड्रेस प्रिटी है या अगली है? पिक्चर की एंडिंग खराब थी या अच्छी थी? Right? Contrasting words are used together. My crush is seriously funny. अरे, serious या funny? Technically, it means funny. Here it means act. Here it means ugly. But the contrasting words are used to to put weightage on the other words. So when I say, by simply saying my crush is funny is a very simple sentence. But to add drama, I will add a contrasting word to add weightage to the word funny. That is why oxymorons exist. Next, I think this is definitely another one that you must have heard of, is hyperbole. Okay, it's pronounced as hyperbole. Hyperbole is again right in the name. This makes things very hyper. It exaggerates things. ठीक है, बढ़ा चढ़ा के बताना. That's hyperbole. Hyperbole is a figure of speech that involves exaggeration. It amplifies a situation, idea, or description, often to evoke strong emotions or create a humorous effect. Whenever our mother calls and we are still quite far away, we say, बस एक मिनट में आया, बस एक मिनट में आया. Right? Whenever we're hungry, we usually utter, इतना भूख लगी है कि मैं ये प्लेट ही खा जाऊं. All of these are examples of hyperbole. All of these are exaggerations of mere statements. So the exaggerations are expressed through hyperbole. For example, I'm so hungry I could eat this table. I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. I have told you a million times to not leave your room dirty. I was dying of laughter. I will be there in 2 seconds. Right? These are all examples of exaggeration and hyperbole. Next is a euphemism. जितने भी अभी हमने फिगर ऑफ स्पीच पढ़े हैं वो हम सब यूज कर चुके हैं. यूफेमिज्म भी हम यूज कर चुके हैं. अगर घर में कोई मर जाता है we never say oh he's dead, okay, my uncle is dead. No, that's wrong, or that feels a very cold way of expressing something like that. Okay, a more formal way of expressing that would be, oh, he's in a better place, or oh, he has expired, he has passed away. Technically, you should not be saying he has expired because he's definitely not a product that has expired. A better phrasing would be he has passed away. So euphemism is a figure of speech that replaces a potentially harsh, offensive, or sensitive word with a more acceptable, more milder expression. It is often used to convey uncomfortable or delicate topics in a more socially acceptable or polite manner. For example, you are telling me a fairy tale can be used instead of saying you are telling me lies. He has gone to heaven could be a better replacement for he is dead. This is also a very common one that people use in office. In office spaces, usually you are fired is never uttered. Okay, the HR always says, I'm sorry, but we have to let you go. That is more formal, more polite, okay, and more socially acceptable manner. This sounds very harsh, very offensive. So these are called euphemisms. Next is alliteration. Now, alliteration are quite easy and simple. Alliteration is the repetition. Okay, it is the repetition. The repetition of what? Repetition of initial consonant sounds. Please remember consonant sounds क्योंकि vowel sounds का अलग figure of speech होता है. So alliteration is the repetition of consonant sounds. For example, Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers. The per repetition. Similarly, they dunked the delicious donut in dairy cream. The repetition. He acts silly sometimes, but is blessed with a brilliant brain. The burr repetition. Shelley sells seashell by the seashore. The S repetition. Okay? जरूरी नहीं है less than two, more than two. अगर दो भी हैं तो भी हो सकता है. For example, there's a very popular game called Subway Surfers. ठीक है, Subway Surfers भी एक alliteration है. क्यों? उसमें दो s's repeat हो रहे हैं. Initial consonant sound repeat हो रहा है. So even this is an alliteration. So alliteration is a repetition of consonant sounds, but assonance is a repetition of vowel sounds. Okay, usually internal vowels. Vowels usually बीच में ही लगते हैं. But इन्हीं का repetition को कहते हैं assonance. For example, look at this one. The rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain. A sound. So this is not alliteration but assonance. Here the mellow wedding bells, golden bells, the harmony they foretell. The air sound. Mike's bike has bright white stripes. The I sound. Okay, so please remember assonance और alliteration दोनों ही भाई हैं, but alliteration consonant से डील करता है, consonant के repetition से, और assonance वावल के रेपिटेशन से. Now, this is also a very common one, onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia has to do with sounds. ठीक है, ये एक ही figure of speech है जो sound से deal करता है. Here, the use of words that imitate the sounds associated with the objects or actions they refer to. ठीक है, for example, the tick tock of the clock made me nervous in the exam. The pitter patter of the raindrops on my windows sill. The bang bang of firecrackers scare the animals. Okay, all of these sounding words, the buzzing of the bees is also onomatopoeia. Okay, so all of these, wherever you feel like there is a sound, that is onomatopoeia. Next is metonymy. Now, metonymy is not a common one. Okay, this is a figure of speech that some of you might not have heard of. So please listen carefully. Metonymy is a figure of speech where the name of one thing is replaced with the name of something else. Why? Because that is closely associated with it or part of it. ठीक है? For example, बहुत ही कॉमन कहावत है, द पेन इज माइटियर देन द सॉर्ड. ठीक है, ये भी किसी कवि ने ही लिखी है. द पेन इज माइटियर देन द सॉर्ड. नाउ ऑब्वियसली वी नो पेन और सॉर्ड का कंपैरिजन नहीं हो रहा है सेंटेंस में. ठीक है, कुछ और कंपेयर किया जा रहा है. हियर द पेन represents wisdom. Pen represents knowledge. Pen represents words. Okay, and it is mightier than sword. Sword represents violence. So, pen is being replaced with words, and sword is being replaced by violence. And that is an example of metonymy, when a closely associated word is replaced with another word. Other examples include, okay, whenever we want to represent judges, we say the bench. ठीक है, members of parliament के लिए हम बोलते हैं the house. Similarly, king के लिए कभी कभी हम बोलते हैं the crown. बोलते हैं ना, please respect the crown. So we mean please respect the king. Silicon Valley needs to constantly push the boundaries in innovation. मैं कोई एड्रेस की बात नहीं कर रही हूँ. I'm talking about the whole IT industry that lives in Silicon Valley. So all of these are examples of metonymy. Next is synecdoche. कैसे pronounce करते हैं इसे? I'll just write it in Hindi. Synecdoche. This is how you pronounce it. Synecdoche. So what happens in synecdoche? In synecdoche, very similar to metonymy. ठीक है? A specific part of an object is used to refer to the whole thing. So इधर a part represents the whole. A part represents the whole. For example, check out my new wheels. Check out my new wheels. Okay, पूरी गाड़ी की बात हो रही है. और जब हम बोलते हैं तो हम कभी कभी इनफॉर्मली बोलते हैं check out my new wheels. वैसे ही the Gen Z also sometimes says check out my new kicks. Kicks referring to shoes. So that is also an example of synecdoche, a part representing the whole. The whole town went mad for Indian-Pakistan match. Okay, representing public. He has many mouths to feed. Okay, mouths, a part of people. Please give me a hand. Please give me a hand. I'm obviously not just asking about your hand. I want assistance from you. Okay, so instead of referring to whole, I'm referring to a part which is hand. So all of these are examples of synecdoche, a part used to refer to the whole. नेक्स्ट आ जाता है एनाफोरा. एनाफोरा भी आपने शायद नहीं सुना होगा. So listen carefully. Anaphora is the repetition of, so again, this also has to do with repetition, but repetition of what? Repetition of the same word at the beginning of successive clauses. यानी हर आगे next clause के बाद जो एक word repeat हो रहा है starting वाला, that is anaphora. For example, unfortunately for him, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time on the wrong day, hence everything went wrong. See, the repetition is happening of the same word. Similarly, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times, it was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. The repetition of it was. We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields, and we shall fight in the hills. Again, repetition of the phrase we shall fight. ठीक है, गानों में ये देखने को बहुत ही कॉमनली मिलता है, एनाफोरा. So repetition of the same word or more than one word. ठीक है, phrases are more than one word. That is anaphora. Next is allusion. ठीक है, allusion शायद सुना नहीं है, बट हाँ आपने यूज जरूर किया है. allusion इज यानी किसी और लिटरेरी वर्क को या किसी और एग्जिस्टिंग वर्क को मेंशन करना. An allusion is a brief reference to a literary work, event, or person either directly or by implication. It is used to refer to another text or object outside of the work of literature. ठीक है, तो अगर एक पिक्चर देख रहे हैं, हम एक मूवी देख रहे हैं, फॉर एग्जाम्पल इफ यू आर वॉचिंग गोलमाल 2 and if they mention Golmaal 1 in that movie, that is an example of allusion. ठीक है, हम एक गाना सुन रहे हैं और एक उस गाने में किसी और गाने का नाम का मेंशन हुआ है, that is also an example of allusion. For example, this one, if you want to propose to your boyfriend, you can simply say, I am Juliet to your Romeo, alluding to Shakespeare's famous text, Romeo Juliet. Similarly, we were listening to Here Comes the Sun by Beatles right when it started raining. ठीक है, तो एक किताब में शायद मैंने ये लाइन ढूंढी तो उसमें मुझे ये दिखा, तो ये काम किसी और का है. ठीक है, ये बीटल्स का गाना है. सो if one work is referring to other work, it is alluding to that. Similarly, go ahead, ask me anything. I'm like Google over here. Okay, Google को मेंशन किया जा रहा है जो मेरे काम से रिलेटेड नहीं है, किसी और का काम है जो मैं अपने काम में डाल रही हूँ. दैट इज ऑल्सो allusion. That was it. These were all important parts of speech, total 13 of them. Okay, I don't think you need to do more than these. They are definitely more than enough to give an exam, but definitely do remember them, especially the basic ones, especially simile, metaphor, personification, oxymoron, onomatopoeia. ठीक है, सीईटी में ज्यादा डिफिकल्ट क्वेश्चंस नहीं आते हैं, पर बेसिक पता होगा तो कभी कभी ऑप्शन एलिमिनेशन में भी हेल्प हो सकता है. That's it from my end. If you have any doubts, please put it in the comments. I will try to reply to them as soon as I can. And I will see you guys in the next lecture where we will continue with the series. And that's about it. Thank you so much. See you guys next week.